You'll see on your tables there's a Spring Impact newsletter. Lisa's got her wonderful smiling face on the cover, and there's a wonderful story inside about what Lisa and her family have been through, and so we wanted to have a chance to be able to share some of that today. I think one of the big challenges that we have is we know so many families that are impacted by childhood cancer. Maybe it's you individually or people you know, or maybe it's a chance to hear for the first time about the impact of what a family goes through and the reason why we need to keep funding the work that we do. First and foremost, Lisa, obviously you were out on the course today and I heard you were carrying Pat's team. How was your golf, first and foremost?
I think my golf was pretty good today. I don't know, team, you can tell me, but yeah, I usually play better in a team event than I do on my own. So yeah, I think the golf was good between all of us. We're definitely a team contributing, yeah.
Absolutely. Lisa, obviously what you went through happened a while ago for your family now. Why is it that after all this time you still continue to feel the importance to speak about what you went through?
Look, I think, yeah, thank you. Look, for us, we had two children with cancer. A son, Ben, who was diagnosed in 2004, and sadly, after operations and treatment, he passed away in 2006. We also then had concurrently our daughter with cancer, diagnosed really pretty much in utero, but not upon birth, and similarly went through treatment and has been in remission since she was 4.5. I think, yeah, she's now 20 years old and at university. It's not lost on us. Here we go, she's here, and on the front cover. It's not lost on us that that really science and research helped to save Ella and helped to treat Ben. But with the advancements over the last 20 years, you know, I think about this a lot, and that is that if we had the treatments today, the advances in technology, that we would have been able to potentially save Ben, and he'd still be here with us today, and you know, he'd be in the family photos instead of the ones that, you know, we're showing you and the ones that are in the newsletter. So for us, it's really important. It's a passion of mine about really getting the research done, not only for you know, curing cancer, but also there's some side effects, some long-term effects, and look, the impacts are so far-reaching and long-lasting. So it's really important that we invest in it. So it's a passion of mine.
Absolutely. As you can read in the newsletter later today, and as you go along, what you went through. So Ben is diagnosed with what's called a Wilms tumour. And kind of begins a pretty aggressive form of radiation at that time. As you said, you were kind of going through the birth of then your next child, Ella, but having recognised what Ben went through, you were able to kind of start the treatment on Ella much earlier and make it effective, ultimately. For you, I guess it must, talk us what that was like, kind of being able to see the impact of what Ben was going through, but also I guess the hope then to know that you were able to catch it early enough with Ella, and obviously that's led to her, you know, being, like you said, 20 and at uni now, you know, like with her friends and everything like that. I guess how was that kind of going through that with two different children that were going through a really similar experience with completely different outcomes?
Yeah, so it was very, very difficult from the start. You know, cancer was not something that we had thought about with our children. The cancer they have is a familial cancer, so it was not completely new. My husband, who's here today, had childhood cancer, and he's here to support me talking with you. So it was not unknown to him, but what was unknown to us, that it was a familial genetic cancer. And so it was very much a surprise after we'd been told by doctors that, you know, the cancer that my husband had was not typically genetically transferred, and two of our first three children ended up having been born with cancer. Oh, look, it's devastating. I mean, you know, our son, I was just cuddling him one day and I was touching his stomach and I felt this mass in his stomach. It felt like a large ball, a tennis ball, perhaps a little bit bigger. And we took him to the hospital, and very quickly they knew that he had a tumour. And I saw Dr. Luch. That was new to me that he was going to be here today. I feel like I've walked through the doors of Westmead Hospital just a few minutes ago, because we were treated by Dr. Luch and his peers at Westmead Oncology Unit. So it's devastating, and you know, to be told that he, you know, had stage 4 by the time that it was caught. Wilms tumour is very treatable, so we always lived in hope, and we were always very positive, and I think that was even the more devastating for us because he didn't make it through that journey. We had him for about 18 months. We spent with him going through treatment. He spent a lot of time in hospital. The children don't only go to hospital for their chemotherapy treatments. I'm sorry, I should look down here. Their chemotherapy treatments, but they have a porter, they have a central line. They often get infections. You have to get them to the hospital within, you know, very quickly because their infections can be life-threatening. So we spent many weeks in hospital. Aaron and I would alternate sleeping in the room with Ben or Ella because they were both going through it. Ella was actually diagnosed in the same week that Ella, we knew that we were having Ella in the same week that Ben was diagnosed. So we'd had the news about his diagnosis. I was in the hospital with him, and I just felt so drained, and I thought it was the emotional and the whole trauma of him being diagnosed with cancer. And it was actually, I was pregnant with Ella, and it was a 50-50. It was a bit of Russian roulette. It was either they had it from, you know, my genes, or they didn't have it, or Aaron's genes, and so she had the cancer, and so then, you know, we had the two of them going through it at the same time. Yeah.
Can I ask on that, and again, thank you so much for your vulnerability on all of this.
It's all right.
I think we've all probably, at some point in the room, felt really helpless for people in our life. What was that like for you?
Look, it's really, it's tough, and I don't know how many people, I mean, I'm sure everyone here's been impacted by cancer. I don't know how many of you have been impacted by childhood cancer. You know, it's a devastating experience to see your children go through the illness, and to keep positive is a challenge every day. Your children are weak, they're fatigued, they're getting infections, they're losing their hair, they're wondering why they're different from other children. You know, our daughter, just as an aside, our daughter, because she went into remission at 4.5, and she'd never had hair up to 4.5. She used to always touch her head, and she was a very girly girl, as you can probably see on the cover, very girly girl. And she grew hair before she started she was about 4 months later, right after chemo stopped. She had actually grown some hair, and she was touching her hair as we were taking to school. You know, just these things really impact the children, but I guess it's the pain and suffering that is what mostly impacted us. How did we get through it? We also had an older son who didn't have cancer, and he was Ben's best mate, and you may see photos of him on there as well. He was 18 months older. So we had to try to be really positive because we also had an older son, and he was only 3 at the time of Ben's diagnosis. And we didn't want to lose hope, we didn't want to be negative, we didn't want to impact the children's lives. So we really tried to be happy and positive and lead as normal a life as possible, which is always challenging when you're spending several times a week in the hospital, and the kids aren't very well. We saw a lot of parents in the hospital. We made friends with them. We shared stories. Unfortunately, as I said, you know, the impacts are far-reaching, and we saw a lot of couples who ended up parting. Families fall apart in these situations. We really tried to hold it together for our children, but look, it's a struggle every day, and I appreciate the story that Patrick just shared, because I completely empathise with what your friend is going through. It's very, very traumatic, and you're just one day at a time, one day at a time with cancer treatment.
And then I think mixed in so hardly with that kind of sadness and inability to be able to help is this joy, and you speak about it so beautifully in the story in the newsletter, and the hope that comes with Ella, and the, I guess, determination that then leads you and your family to keep being involved with things like the Kids Cancer Project and keep speaking out and keep sharing your story. You speak so powerfully in there about why you so strongly believe that research is the answer. Why, of all the things that people can give money to, it's so wonderful to see so many people here in a room today that we've had to open the doors further than what we normally would. It's a wonderful thing to see people so generous and wanting to support such a vital thing when it comes to research. Why research?
Research is going to help to prevent, children dying from cancer. I mean, there's no doubt. We've been involved with the hospital, for a long time. We've been involved in, helping them to fit out the oncology unit with new beds, and we've been involved with Starlight, and they're all great things, and so we, would continue from time to time to do that. But I think the really important part for me is the research, because that's what's going to save the lives. And that's not to take away from when the children are in hospital being treated. I can't tell you, the things that some of the other charities are doing are fantastic as well, because that experience in hospital would not be the way it is. It is so much more positive for the kids because of that. But it's investment in the research, the technology, diagnosis, treatment plans, dealing with the long-term effects, and for us that's critical. And as I said to you before, I have no doubt that if we had been, recently in the last couple of years, it would have been a very different story that we would be telling today for our family.
Yeah. And I think to that end, being able to continue to fund better treatments, be able to find cures as to what Pat talked about at the start, is going to make the difference for families in 15, 20 years looking back, that they're not having to share their story in this way. They're sharing a wonderful story of survival because of the advances in science. I think I would speak on behalf of everyone. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and for being so willing to share your family with us. Can I give Lisa and Aaron a massive round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you.